I mean, I know that we're all supposed to pretend that everything that's going on around us and in our lives is 100% okay, but sometimes things are hard, and that's okay.
You're listening to the Happy Doc Student Podcast, a podcast dedicated to providing clarity to the often mysterious doctoral process. Do you feel like you're losing your mind? Let me and my guests show you how to put more joy in your journey and graduate with your sanity, health, and relationships intact. I'm your host, Dr. Heather Frederick, and this is episode 83. And on this episode, I am so excited to welcome Ellen Leonard. Ellen's professional background and expertise includes 12 years as a published scientific researcher and nearly a decade teaching at Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis. The creator of the StressLess Method, she has taught thousands of students and clients how to manage and prevent stress. And today I can't wait to discuss stress management as an essential tool, not only for doctoral students, but heck, look around for everyone in this day and age. Ellen, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Heather. I'm excited to be here.
Why don't we spend just a couple of minutes with you explaining to the audience what was the catalyst? You were in this academic setting, doing really well, and something happened and you decided, hang on, there's a different path I want to go here with helping people understand how to stress less.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I feel like this is the group that will actually get what I'm saying because it was such a weird experience. So for all of college and then after college, I did everything I thought I was supposed to do. I was a huge nerd. Originally, I was pre-med, and then I was like, I don't know. It's kind of weird to think about me being in charge of whether or not people live and die. Like, that freaked me out. So I got off I was still doing pre-med. I was like, okay, well, what can I do with this degree? And so I went into research. I was in a developmental hematopoiesis lab and then a renal physiology lab. And I just kept going, like doing this thing that I just happened to be good at and nerdy at. And then one day I was like, oh wait, I could do anything. Huh. Like, it had literally never occurred to me. It wasn't even, there wasn't a direct catalyst that day. It was just one day I was like, oh, really? That doesn't seem right. Like, I doubted it. I was like, I can do whatever I want. No, that's okay. So then I started to explore wellness a little bit more, and I was specifically interested in evidence-based wellness stuff. So that really fascinated me because I was like, oh, I could use my nerdiness not to do this really granular science work that, like, someday 20 years from now might contribute to something somewhere being a little bit better or easier or something like that. But I could do something really boots on the ground, helping people, think about science and evidence-based practices in a different way and apply them in their real life. And so that's what I ended up doing.
And I love that because I know many of the people I come across, sometimes when you want to talk about things that are related to stress reducing, right away they think meditation, yoga, kind of woo-woo type of stuff. But as time goes on, there's more and more evidence, there's more and more science backing up how these skills, these tools change our physiology, change our experience of reality.
Yeah, I think it's such an interesting thing to explore. And I love that they're learning more and more every day. And at first, listen, I was a little bit iffy about, I'm going to say it out loud, everybody, qualitative research. I'm a little iffy about it. Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm confessing like my heart because I know the audience and I know half of them were just like, oh, me too, girl. Like, I'm still wonky about it. And then the other half was like, stop being mean with research. That's my jam. So I hear you. But so, as a researcher in a science lab, I was taught quantitative. Like, we didn't even ask qualitative questions. That wasn't even a thing. And so I've come to appreciate through extensive reading and studying and nerding that yes, it has some to offer. I especially value the field of positive psychology is really on the forefront. They are doing amazing research into what helps us live our best lives. I think that's just such an interesting way to use science. Sorry, I get a little excited. I'm going to settle down.
We were going to talk today, maybe starting about just this concept of stress.
Yeah, because I think so often stress is viewed as this ubiquitous thing that is omnipresent and there's really nothing you can do about it. It's almost like a learned helplessness and with regards to stress. So people would say something like, oh, work is so stressful or getting my degree is so stressful. And that doesn't really give you any power. That kind of gives your power to take action away. And so when you add that element of specificity to it that I work with my clients, where you get more what it is specifically that's stressing you out, what is adding that stress to your life, that can just be an incredibly powerful stress management tool for people in its simplicity. But I wanted to also say that often, because I was in labs, so I was with grad students a lot. Most of my friends in college and in my early 20s were grad students, which, spoiler alert, they all got their degrees. They're all fine. So all of you listening, you will be okay. I believe in you. But anyway, something I noticed was that the stress was so isolating for them. They would feel like they were the only ones, and they would look around to everybody in their program and be worried that it was just them that was stressed. And that kind of language like, oh, I should be able to do this. This shouldn't be so hard. And so I just want to say, in case nobody else is, the reason you're stressed and overwhelmed is because what you're doing is really hard. It's amazing what you're doing, and it's hard work. And being stressed and overwhelmed by that is not only your body, your mind, your emotions letting you know that you really care about this, right? You don't just roll into a PhD program for something you don't care a lot about. You're not just like, oh, maybe. This is something you're really passionate about. And so part of the reason that you're stressed is that you really care and that it's really hard. And so I just wanted to let you know that you are having this human reaction to what you are going through. And I know you know that rationally. I know you're like, yes, rationally, I know that. But when you're in it can just be so overwhelming and just be so challenging. And so I just wanted to let you know that you're not alone.
So everyone listening can take a deep breath and kind of rest in this knowledge. And Ellen, I love that you bring that up. A number of guests bring up things like the imposter syndrome. And it's almost like this double whammy. You have people who are highly competent, right? Successful. And then they're in a doctoral program, and being stressed is almost like a dirty secret. We don't tell.
It's viewed often as a failure, which is always so surprising to me. Like over the years, I've gotten used to it, but it's like, well, no, you're just human. I mean, I know that we're all supposed to pretend that everything that's going on around us and in our lives is 100% okay, but sometimes things are hard. And that's okay.
And I've heard you on other podcasts bring up this idea, this point of view that I thought was very helpful. And that is the human body is made for these acute stressors. But when you put yourself in a situation like a long-term graduate program, or even just right now living with some of the stuff that we're living with, you're in a state of chronic stress.
Yeah. And so it's not funny, but it's a little funny to my science brain, because it's like, literally, humans were not designed to do this. Everything is a little bit harder right now. Every client I am working with and every friend of mine is resonating with that right now. So if you're finding that to be true, everything's just a little bit harder right now. And part of the reason is that we're literally not made to handle this amount of stress for this long. And so something like a doctoral program can have that element. It can seem like you are never going to, it will never end. Your dissertation will never be done. Your research, it can feel that way. And so that chronic stress can really take a toll over time. So that's why it's so important to really take stress management seriously and to figure out what it is that works for you to help you learn how to manage your stress more effectively.
And I think this is such an important point, because many students that I work with, I'll see the physical symptoms, even symptoms that come through like in their writing, where they're displaying they're under chronic stress and they need to manage this better, but they're almost seeing it as an acute stress. Well, I'll get done with this program and then I'll take care of my health, right? Like there eventually will be an end to this. So I'm just going to shove it aside. I'm just going to deal with it. I'm just going to trudge through this muscle through this. But what I see is either that leads to attriting from the program because they can't muscle through it, or they do and they get to the end and it's just not pretty with broken relationships, broken bodies, broken minds. So, Ellen, you mentioned techniques and strategies. Where do you start with a client when they come to you stressed out?
Well, and so first of all, I want to say, Heather, those are all such excellent points that often the way that we push ourselves, like pushing through the stress is not a solution. Not only is that not an evidence-based solution, but I think we all rationally know that that's not going to work out. And it just doesn't lead to any kind of sustainability in your life. And for you to be able to make it through what you're doing, really, ideally, you should have a plan. And I'm a big proponent of figuring out what actually works for you because, okay, all the researchers on this call, you know that a great evidence-based strategy is going to say something like, well, this worked for 7 out of 10 people. But what I always think about is the 3 out of 10. And okay, well, so they're going to need something else, maybe. They're going to need a different strategy. So I always emphasize finding something that works for you. So if you are powering through meditation because somebody told you that it will work and you hate it and it doesn't have any benefits from you, I'm going to invite you just to stop that right now, or whatever version of that is in your life. You know, it's great to get new ideas. And again, there's so much research coming out, especially in the field of positive psychology, with great ideas about mindfulness and meditation, and yoga and growth mindset and flow. And I could go on. I'll settle down. There's a lot of different things, but you have to figure out what works for you. And so I'm going to invite you to consider how stress might be affecting you right now, physically, mentally, and emotionally, right? Because we are beings with rich layers to ourselves. We are not just our bodies. We are not just our minds. We are more. But I'm going to guess that you might notice, for instance, if you're not sleeping well, or if you have some digestive issues, or some chronic pain, those are some ways that stress shows up physically. Mentally, these are big ones, especially for the work that all the listeners are doing, right? If you have any kind of cognitive anything, like that foggy brain or memory issues where you just can't quite like get past that racing mind, right? Those can be symptoms of stress as well. And then emotional, right? We are stressed. We are not the best at emotional regulation, which Heather mentioned, destroyed relationships. Yes, that's definitely something that can happen. But you know how it shows up for me is I notice I'm a little bit meaner to people I love. Just leaks out like that. I'm sure nobody else knows what I'm talking about at all. It's never happened to anybody else on the call. So just check in and see. And then think about what might help you with that specific thing. What's causing it? And what specifically might help you? So, of course, I've got some techniques. And for those of you playing at home, they're going to be super simple because I know you're not wandering around like, oh my gosh, I have all this free time. I really want to try a bunch of new things. I know that's not your reality. Your reality is jam-packed. You're already busy. And so the things I'm going to suggest are going to sound super simple, but I'm going to invite you to take a step back with your rational brain that I know is so smart. I know nerds. I know you're going to resonate with what I'm saying and see the point of it. Number one, make sure your basic needs are being met. Okay. If you want to talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we can get into that, but basic needs like sleep. I know sometimes you have things that are due and you can't sleep, or you have a baby and you can't sleep. But ideally, whenever you can, try to sleep and get good sleep. And if you're not getting good sleep, figure out what's going on and make a plan. Also, eating. I've heard that people do that, and that people who don't skip meals are going to be less stressed. It's so weird. And I know rationally, all of you listening right now know what it's like when you skip a meal. And you're like, yeah, she might have a point. Hydrate. You know that you're made mostly out of water. So you got to put some water back in there. Movement. I know you probably don't have time to exercise. If you do, that's awesome. That's great. Keep doing that. That is an insanely good stress management tool. But maybe it's just playing with your kids or taking your dog for a walk, or you're losing your mind in the library with all these journal articles and you just need to get out and go for a walk. Those all count. Those are all stress management tools. And also, don't forget, connection is a basic need. You plus other humans. I don't know what you're doing. You're talking. It might be remote on Zoom. It might be in person. Connect. And then I'm going to roll in with 2 bonuses, people. I'm going to be a little crazy. And these 2 are going to sound really hard. This is so funny because these are going to be the ones that you're like, I don't know if I can do that. And they're the easiest ones. Okay, you ready? I'm going to ask number 1 that you think about relaxing. What? Relaxing, like taking a break? I know you've seen it on TV, so I know that you can probably do it. You've seen other people relax and have fun, so I believe in you. Number 2, have fun. Oh my goodness, what is that? Do you even remember what that is? I'm sure there's books on it if you need help remembering. But those are my basic tips. So hopefully those are helpful.
This concept of fun is fascinating to me because a group of friends and I started a discussion where we realized we don't ask ourselves, what do we do for fun? Or if you ask someone, like listeners right now think, if we were to ask you, and what do you do for fun? How easy is it for you to come up with a laundry list? And when was the last time you did those things?
Right? And it's so hard, even for me. And that's why I focus on fun sometimes in these talks, because I struggle with it. It's hard, especially when you come from academia, because you have been taught that you are doing this and you're doing that, and it all has a purpose. And you're going to finish that book and you're going to finish that paper and you're going to finish that research and you've got to focus. And then it's like, wait, I don't even know how to have fun anymore. I personally find it very challenging. Heather, what do you like to do for fun? Can you even answer that question? Because I'm not sure I could.
Well, luckily for me, I do love yoga. I love moving my body in that way. I love the way I feel after. So I get a 2-for-1 there. I love riding my bike. And I noticed a couple of days ago, I hadn't been on my bike for over a week. And the second I get on that bike, I have the hugest smile on my face. I don't know if I'm reliving childhood memories or what. I don't really care. I feel good. I have fun. Of course, there are things like hanging out with friends. I'm going to go swimming in the ocean with my best friend this weekend, and I can't wait. But she was the one who challenged me. She said, Heather, I did this thing. And when I woke up in the morning, I said, fun first, fun first. And over my coffee, I would ask myself, what could I do today that was fun? And I thought, oh my gosh, that, I tried doing that. And that's when I realized how out of touch I was with my funness.
Yeah, and it's so easy to do. So when I started to evaluate this, one of the things I discovered that I think is fun. Okay, so I am, as we're making this, I'm 45 years old, so I came of age in the 90s. And so I started listening to 90s music and dancing for fun. I don't do it with anybody or near anybody, but it is so much fun. And I'm like, I totally forgot about this song. And I get really excited. And I'm not even particularly into music. It's more like a combination of memory, sense memory, and just experiencing that and giving myself permission to take a break for a song from work, from being focused, from accomplishing things, and just taking that break. So I'm also counting it as relaxing. So I'm counting it as a twofer.
Yes, I have gone so far now as to talk about my fun practices as self-care, because you just said the key word, allow yourself, right? So when you give yourself permission, you are telling yourself you're worth this. You're making this investment. I love music too. And one thing that I did recently was I thought, wow, I used to go listen to live music all the time. Then COVID happened. I kind of got out of the habit. It's funny as we're kind of reinventing our lives and how we make up our daily lives. And so if what Ellen was saying about, dancing to 90s music, maybe find a cover band this week and give yourself permission to go out and have some fun, because it will reduce your stress, right?
It will. It totally reduces your stress. And here's a bonus for those of you that need to multitask. It also helps to do a lot of things for your cognitive function, right? That idea of taking a break from whatever problem you're working on, whatever project you're working on, and giving your brain and your body and your mind and everything just a break. It can be an incredibly powerful tool for for your career and for the degree you're working on as well. So if you need a little incentive, there's one.
And that is a huge point that is, I think, worth spending just a couple more seconds on here, because if you're in a situation where you're writing and it's not coming, or you're trying to crunch your numbers and something's not working, sometimes throwing on Spotify and doing a little jig, or here's another one of my favorites, giving yourself permission for a nap. And then you come back, right? And you can now perform because you've reduced that stress. So to really think of this as a non-negotiable skill that you're honing, learning how to stress less. And I love that you brought up it's very subjective, right? Again, giving people the freedom to say, you know what, hey, meditation's not for me. I like swimming or dancing or just getting out there and figuring out what works for you, right? I've had people say, I sit in meditation, I come out more stressed because I know I didn't do it right.
I find that with so many clients and their experience with meditation. And so if you're finding that with meditation, it might not be that meditation is wrong for you. It might just be that that way is wrong for you. There's so many different ways to do it, and you just have to find the one that works for you. And yeah, so I have my clients try out a bunch of different kinds. And sometimes it's not right for them. Sometimes it is. Just didn't have the right kind.
And so this subjective aspect, but also the simple aspect. And again, another key point that is worth just driving home. I think a lot of humans are skeptical, but particularly this audience who is trained to look at the research and think, I'm in this situation that's very complicated. Therefore, the solution to get out of it must be very complicated. And so sometimes I think there's a resistance because it's so darn simple. What? Hydrate, eat well, sleep. But these are life-changing tips.
Yeah, and rationally, everybody listening knows that those are literally your basic needs, and that ideally they're met daily and on a regular basis, and so that your body, your mind, your emotions can start to rely on them. And so you create an environment that actually supports the work that you're trying to do. And so that's one of my next steps would be, I know that everybody listening is good at planning, right? You have this element of being a good planner. And so I would encourage you to think about the stress management as just something else that you plan. And bonus, it has these other things that it does, right? If you're planning on exercising anyway, that's a stress management tool. If you write your lunch into your planner, which is how I got my lunch habit back. I put that thing in my planner every day for a year, and I didn't do anything else. Oh, it's really hard at first, but then the benefits are just ridiculous. I, for a while, also planned when I was going to sleep. I put that in my planner as well, and I treated it like I would treat anything else that I was doing for work or for my degree. And so I'd encourage you to treat stress management the same way. So how are you going to integrate those things into your day-to-day life? And then when I have weeks that I know are going to be a challenge. So when I was teaching and I knew that finals week was coming up, I would have boosted my stress management for that week. I would meal prep in advance. So I made sure that I had food around because food's really big with me. If I'm not fed, we're all going to suffer. And so I would make sure that that was planned. I would make sure that I had the time and the space I need to do what I needed to get done. And so I think there's an element of planning that you will find very familiar and comforting that can support you in integrating this into your life in a way that also checks off other boxes of things that you wanted to do anyway.
Yeah, so there's a time to dual task and there's a time not to dual task. But, you mentioned going for a walk. You mentioned connection being a basic human need. Grab your kid, grab your partner, grab your best friend on the phone, right? And block out that time blocking. So important. Don't think it's going to get done if you don't put it on your calendar. right?
And I think, especially if you're going for your doctorate right now, that scheduling friends, even just having a weekly meeting with your bestie, can be life-changing. I did that with my best friend when she was going through her doctoral experience. We had a once-a-week meeting. I made her feel really guilty about canceling, so she kept it. But it kept her going because it was a time when she had to stop and connect with me. And we were living in different cities at the time. And so it was a really lovely way to maintain that as she was going through this really hard thing in her life. It was nice to have that touchstone. And I think she did that with several other friends and family members as well to make sure that those connections were maintained.
And so as you're listening, I'm inviting you to think about what's popping out for you. Is it time to be preemptive and plan your meals on the weekend? Is it time to call up that best friend, dust off your hiking shoes? But you hear it a lot on this podcast because this podcast is about helping you not just graduate, but graduate with your sanity, your health, and your relationships intact. And that is very difficult to do if you don't take stress management seriously.
Yeah, I agree.
So, Ellen, before we close out this episode, I'm curious if you have a favorite quote or some final words of wisdom that you would like to share with the audience.
So my go-to quote is super nerdy. Okay, so I'm going to ask everybody to go back in time to the 2000s when a little show called Firefly was on TV. It's a Joss Whedon show. So any nerds out there, yeah, you're with me. And my favorite quote from that show was, "We can do the impossible, and that makes us mighty." And I think about that quote way more than I should, especially when I'm experiencing something challenging. I come back to that quote a lot.
And it might feel like what you're doing is impossible, but you can be empowered through managing your stress, right? Making sure you feel healthy, you feel well, and just channel in those mighty emotions through some really, really simple techniques. Ellen, I'm going to make sure that in the show notes, they have the website for additional resources and also how to contact you through LinkedIn.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Yeah. And the link she's going to share has some of my favorite go-to podcasts and apps and books. So for anybody who wants to dive a little bit deeper.
Thanks so much for sharing your time with us today, Ellen. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks so much for listening, and I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. Until then, if you're looking for more ways to invite joy into your journey, check out the free resources at expandyourhappy.com. You'll find downloads like an article I wrote titled, "The Doctoral Journey, 12 Things You Need to Know That They Probably Won't Tell You," and a worksheet that will help you pick a general research area for your dissertation or doctoral project. Based on audience request, there is a PDF that organizes all podcasts by the 7 steps detailed in the Happy Doc Student Handbook, which you can also find on the website. And if you're looking for Happy Doc Student swag, I've got that too. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and YouTube channel, and if you want to make my day, rate and review so that together we can change the way graduate education is delivered and experienced. Hey, one more thing. Just a quick reminder that the information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only.